Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Sports Court. I'm Gregory Beatty, alongside the wonderful Eddie Cox. My main man, Eddie Cox, is in the building. Grade A Media, Grade A Radio. Skrillerilla Montana is in the building. We're in here doing our thing today. And I tell you what, it is blazing hot out there, and it's only going to get hotter. And Eddie Cox, I'm telling you, man, this gas prices are out of control right now, bro.
Oh, man, I don't want to talk about it. It's bad. It's bad. It's as bad as it's ever been, and I hope that somehow, some way, there's some relief in the future. But relief doesn't look like it's anything that I'm going to get. It doesn't look like it's anything that Deshaun Watson's going to get, or anything about the recent firings as NBA teams are moving on and looking for new coaches. But what do you think about that, Greg?
Well, you know what? Hey, I'll tell you this. While I'm sitting there trying to share on our Facebook Live, and I do not see the video popping up anywhere right now, so I can't share right this second, but I promise I will get to it. I know it's on right now. There it is right there. Appreciate you, Skrillerilla. But, hey, I'll tell you this. And, Eddie, I've said it in here before. I've said it a number of times that the Philadelphia Phillies and Joe Girardi, he better be careful, because he's probably going to be the first one to get axed, because what that team was expected to do, the talent on that team. Now, granted, he has not had the bullpen to roll with. He has not had the defense has been terrible, but in his 2 seasons with Philly, he has not been good. I tell you this too, and Joe Madden got axed today as well, Eddie, but as far as Joe Girardi, the thing with him is that I noticed even last season, even Bryce Harper called him out to the carpet in a veil type of way, a not so veil type of way, but kind of as he parted with the franchise, as he parted ways with the franchise, Bryce Harper said in an interview after they're on a 3-game winning streak now, grand salami in the last game they had a couple days ago, Sunday I think it was. Grand salami to tie the game up and ultimately won it by Bryson Stott, and grand salami by B Harp to tie it up 6-6, and then the opponent took the lead, and then next thing you know, Bryson Stott came back, and the opponent being the Anaheim Angels, the Los Angeles Angels, who's lost 12 in a row after last night. And what I noticed last season was what Bryce Harper stated was that they have to play the young guys. And I remember Mickey Moniak, who was the number 1 pick in the draft, who now they have back after that broken hand in preseason in the spring training. Now they have him back. I remember saying last season when they called him up for a second, and then next thing you know, Joe Girardi sent him right back down after he showed some big-time promise, in my opinion, in the few games that he was playing. And I'm like, why in the hell is he sending him back down right now? Let the guy play. Let him evolve. I mean, I thought he was ready at that time. And Bryce Harper alluded to it with Bryson Stott, another young prospect, hit that 3-run homer to finish that game off the other day against the Angels. And I don't think Joe Girardi, he handled that well with letting these young guys evolve. But whatever the case may have been, he's out. Nothing against Joe Girardi, but sometimes those guys need a new voice in the locker room, and because of it, they're on a 3-game win streak. Now, they will not win that division with the Mets playing the way they're playing, but you need a new voice. We'll see if they can get that wild card now, but it's a long season, but it's not surprising that Joe Girardi was axed from the Philadelphia Phillies.
I mean, it's interesting timing, as coaching positions are changing across sports, NBA, MLB. Darvin Ham, we're going to talk about that later as he's announced the new head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. But to talk about the Phillies for a little bit and Joe Girardi, I don't know, is it just me? Not like I watched a ton of Joe Girardi, but what I got, from him, or from when I got to see him when he was with the Yankees, I just never thought he was a good manager, period. I thought he was probably a better player than he was manager, and I'm surprised that he stuck around for as long as he has, getting a second opportunity with the Phillies. I never thought he was any good, so this doesn't surprise me one bit. They need to find somebody who can come in and who can sort of build this thing from the ground up. They need their AJ Hinch, so to speak, a guy with new, fresh, innovative ideas they can inject into this franchise and into this organization and sort of wake them up. It's not like they don't have talent. It's not like they don't have players that can be played. It's like they just don't have the right direction, with what they're doing in the draft, in their farm system year after year, and then how they handle these players, developing them and getting them up at the major league level. They are having issues with that left and right. They need somebody to come in and retool this program from the ground up, sort of the way Luno did with the Astros. And even if that guy doesn't stick around for the long haul, you set something like that up. And as we've seen here in Houston, the sort of handing or changing hands of the baton, it sort of takes place, fluid and seamlessly because such a good product is already built. It's like if Jeff Bezos wanted to walk away and say, hey, somebody else is going to run Amazon, chances are Amazon's still going to do pretty damn good for a while just based on what he's implemented and the practices that he has in place.
Right.
And that's kind of how the Astros are. The Phillies need to find their guy, or their combination of general manager and manager that can go ahead and retool this whole thing from the ground up and get them going, man, because it's disappointing. When Bryce Harper went there, I think we thought there might have been, more success on the horizon for the Phillies, and it just hasn't happened. It hasn't come to fruition. It's disappointing. Disappointing for the listeners that catch Sports Court who are Philadelphia fans. I know we got a few of you guys out there. It's disappointing for you guys. I know you'll want to see the Phillies get better.
Especially Dwayne Thompson. I know I would love to hear his take on this firing, but I called it a few weeks ago, and again, and I agree, and I concur with what you're saying about they have to take the approach to Astros. One thing about the Astros, say what you want about them cheating in years past and things of that sort, but one thing we do know is that they've always had a tremendous scouting department, and they've always developed their young players. If you look at Pena, what he's doing right now, replacing Carlos Correa, they haven't missed one beat. I mean, he's on the verge of being a superstar. So they have a great scouting department, and they also instill the confidence in their young players. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, again, before Bryce Harper made those comments about Bryson Stott, who's a tremendous prospect, I was noticing that too. Again, last year when he moved Moniak back down, now he's playing again. Let's see if they let him evolve. But you have to instill confidence in these young players and let them go through the fire, go through these live bullets, and learn on the fly. I mean, I don't see, like, say, for instance, Mickey Moniak and Odubel Herrera, the center fielder that they're platooning guys with right now. He shows flashes from time to time, but this guy was the #1 pick in the draft. And again, I was scratching my head last season when they moved him back down, when they sent him back down after he was tearing up the minor leagues. And now he got off to a slow start when he first got drafted, the #1 pick in the draft, had to put on some weight, had to evolve as a hitter, as a player, get stronger, which he did. And I just thought the timing of them moving him back down at the behest of Joe Girardi last year was a bad move. And I don't think they had a center fielder in place that should be like Odubel Herrera, who should have been outright the center fielder when you have a guy that shows all this promise. That's the #1 pick in the draft. Throw him out there, 23 years of age, put him out there after he's tearing it up in the minor leagues. Put him out there and let the guy play. But that's how you kill his confidence, by sending him back down when he definitely deserved the opportunity to be up. So we'll see.
Look, sometimes it's a problem with teams. They don't have a plan for guys. They're just reacting to whatever, the manager feels. Oh, I think he needs to take assignment whenever, really the kid needs to play. And if you look at, we compare these teams to the Astros, because if you look at the success that they've had, their success has been, you can't deny 5 back-to-back championship series, championship series appearances, and multiple 3 World Series appearances with 1 win. You can't deny the format, that they have for developing players. It works. So whenever a guy sees, like, hey, Bregman came up through the ranks, it works. Altuve comes up through the ranks, it works. Correa, look at what he did. This works. Now, definitely with the young Pena, that gives confidence in players that these guys managing the organization and
believe in them,
managing their careers, that they know what they're doing, that they're going to get out of their arbitration, and they're going to be in a position where even if they're not going to get a big contract with the team that developed them, they're definitely going to get that contract from somebody out on the open market.
Right,
and that's important to players. They don't want to be like, like your boy you're talking about here, where you've got the manager, don't know if you want to let the kid play. Regardless of the success, you're sending him back down to the minors. At the end of his arbitration, where is he going to be at? Probably right where the Phillies want him, where they can get him on a, prove it type of deal.
On the cheap, right.
And see where he sees where he's, where they can see where he's at, where really if they would have developed him, he should be getting in those first years of getting his feet wet in the majors out of the way. And then maybe you've got an all-star on your hands come year 3, year 4. To think about the Kyle Tucker route that he took to Major League Baseball with the Houston Astros. So, you hit the nail on the head. That is their biggest issue, having no plan at all. all with how to develop these prospects. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and not to throw too much shade on Joe Girardi, but again, I just thought that was telling, and a guy that I thought was proving that he should have been able to stay up and play some ball. But to your point, man, I agree. I mean, you have to, and that's why I said you have to instill the confidence in these players, and you have to take that long-term approach. And again, they had no one else that was worthy of commanding that center field position for the entire season, in my opinion. I don't think there was anyone that just showed and proved that, hey, this is their spot, where it was enough to warrant them moving the number one pick in the draft, the number one pick a few years prior, back down to the minors. So it was interesting when I heard Bryce Harper make that comment. It was a veiled shot at Joe Girardi. In my opinion, hey, play these young guys, let them develop. And, I mean, because they're talented, not just play them because you drafted them at a certain point in the draft, the first pick in the draft. I mean, if he's not ready, he's not ready. But from what I saw, I thought he was ready. And from what I saw this past spring training, I thought he was ready. And he made the active roster, but he actually got hurt. But again, I thought he should have been there last year. So I thought that was the beginning of the end for Joe Girardi. It was something that made me scratch my head when that happened. And again, you see the way the Astros do things, and that's the blueprint of how you develop talent and you develop these guys not only physically but mentally as well.
Now, speaking of the beginning of the end, real quick, not to sort of jerk the
because
card to
I
the
was
left
talking
on
about
you.
the Angels right quick.
How close was Dusty Baker to whipping somebody's ass last night, or vice versa? How close was it to Dusty, taking a haymaker as Dusty gets right in the mix? I mean, I love it, so to speak, but you'll hear him take criticism because he is an older guy. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get your opinion, Greg. Mm-hmm. Like it or love it or hate it, Dusty Baker, sort of being the spearhead of.
I like it.
Okay,
I love it. Actually.
I like it too because imagine if he goes down. Oh man, you're gonna get the wrath of all the Astros.
No, Eddie, I think what it is, and actually when we came in here, I wore this Astros jersey, but the show was not geared toward the Houston Astros. We just decided right before the show that we were going to open up with the Houston Astros. Now, of course, we're going to talk some NBA Finals. Stay tuned for that. Definitely going to talk about that. Going to talk some NFL. Going to give a few tidbits on a few things. Tiger Woods not playing in the U.S. Open, things of that sort. But as far as Dusty Baker, Eddie, I think it comes down to this. I think when these guys get into those scrums, when it's bench clearing brawls, they know that for the most part, guys are going to get between them, break them up, and things of that sort. I don't think Dusty wanted anybody to throw some haymakers at him now.
It's going to be like a bunch of yard roosters just running around poking the chest out.
That's it, man. Out there posturing and doing things of that sort, hoping someone gets in between them. But what I love about it, as far as it being Dusty Baker, it shows his team that he's willing to fight for them. And it shows his team that he has their back no matter what. So if he instills that fire in them, if he continues to instill that fire and confidence in them, and the fact that he has their back in any situation, whether it's wrong or right, no matter who was in the wrong, who was in the right, whether Neris threw the pitch at the guy on purpose or what.
Which it's interesting that you mentioned that. This sort of bad blood that seemed to be brewing up between the Mariners and the Astros. It's not just this series; it's been building up in previous series. It seems like these guys have, it's a chippier series than what you typically get when you're getting the Mariners and the Astros together for whatever reason. Ever since the Abraham Toro trade, it seems like for whatever reason they've got it out for the Astros, and you can understand why. They've been kicking their ass for the past 5 years.
I know, right?
I get it, so I understand. But the Mariners hope that they turned a corner in their organization. They there was a couple series I remember last season where they jumped up and surprised the Astros. Spanked some runs. I don't remember when they first traded Toro.
Yeah.
He hit a couple big home runs against them. I think one was a game winner. So the Mariners do have it out for the Astros, but to me, it's just weird that all of a sudden there's this like bad blood to where they're one pitch up and in, a little bit of chin music away from clearing the benches. I'm just wondering where this all really came from.
Where I think it probably comes from the fact that the Mariners are, where are they in the standings, like about 12 games behind Astros? So that would add to some frustration right there when the team that you're playing,
that's a good point.
Pretty much have no chance of catching in the division, and you're probably not going to be a playoff team, even though they've shown some flashes from time to time. I'm not saying the Mariners are that terrible, and they have some promise on that team. But the fact that they're playing a team who they know they're not going to catch for the division lead. And you know who else? Before we move on and talk some football and basketball and all this and that, you know who else is not going to catch the Astros? And I posed a question to you before the season started, and we've always said free Mike Trout because the Los Angeles Angels, has never made the playoffs since he's been there, as great as he's been. Now, he's been in a slump lately, and so can't really give him any credit right now with the slump he's been in, even though before that slump, he was playing on an MVP level, and you know he's going to get it back together.
It's funny,
but Joe Madden, a World Series winner, Eddie,
Yeah.
for the Chicago Cubs, they've lost 16 out of 19, the last 12 in a row. Now, we're talking about the former number 1 pick in Mickey Moniak being the everyday center fielder. I think he should be the everyday center fielder for the Philadelphia Phillies. A former number 1 pick is taking over the helm, at least right now. Now, for the Phillies, Thompson is the guy that's going to take over for, his name is Rob Thompson, without the P, Rob Thompson, Thomson. He's going to take over for right now. But for the Angels, you have Phil Nevin, a former number 1 pick, former MVP, even though he never lived up to the number 1 pick status when he played, but he was a nice player. He's going to take over for the time being. But what happened to the Angels, man? I mean, no fire. I mean, it's the same thing that now, Madden has been there for 3 years, never made the playoffs. And what happened to the Angels? I bet you don't even know. I don't know.
You look at them top to bottom of the roster, they should be winning games. They've got a great pitching staff. They've got, good offensive, juggernaut type talent.
What's happening?
Sometimes teams don't gel for whatever reason. They can't play winning baseball. The combination of players that you have, for whatever reason, they don't fit the code. They don't break the code. They don't.
Rendon has been a disappointment.
They just don't live up to it. And think about that. Think about where he was at when he came over from the Nationals. Like, we're talking about
often
a guy
injured.
Who, I mean, he made a name for himself
Yes,
in the World Series
against
the Astros. You could say you take Rendon out of the equation, there's no way the Nationals win that World Series.
Right.
And you're right. He's been a disappointment for the Angels. But if I'm being honest, I never really had faith in the Angels, as good as they are top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen them string together,
a
long
run.
periods of playing really good baseball.
Yeah.
And when they are, either, the bottom will fall out for some odd reason, or somebody will get hurt. They'll end up sending, their big outfielder and pitcher. He'll end up being on the DL. That's a big
they
loss
do
for
have a
them
lot of
when
injuries like
when
that.
he goes down. But this time, who would have thought that it was a slap, I think, that derailed this last winning streak? Because supposedly, I think if I've heard this correctly, that they haven't won a game since, there was trouble and drama in the fantasy league that Mike Trout is the commissioner of, and Jock Peterson got his face slapped off.
By Tommy Pham?
Yeah, by Tommy Pham.
Hey, man, that right there.
And then Mike Trout was criticized around the world, on the World Wide Web, I guess I should say, for being a terrible fantasy owner. And since then, he just hasn't got it. He's had the yips ever since then.
You know what? That's interesting right there. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but obviously whatever Joe Madden was preaching, they were not listening to. And to your point about them being often injured, that is true. But my thinking was, coming into the season with the Angels, before we move on, is the fact they have last year's MVP. You have the best player in baseball. Now, Justin Upton was a disappointment, at least the last year or so. He hasn't lived up to the billing as well, former number 1 pick. But they have him in the minors right now. Maybe they bring him up at some point.
I don't know.
And
But
he may add some
he was
pop every now and
already,
then.
I'd say he peaked as a player
I agree.
whenever they
I
got
agree.
him. So he was on the downside of his career.
You would hope he get a resurgence some kind of way.
Yeah,
Probably give him a few homers.
Some guys, it just doesn't happen.
Well, he's the type. Yeah, I agree, because he's the type of guy. He's the type of guy that can be batting 220, but he'll give you that 3-run homer when you need it.
Right.
But at the same time, he's batting 220. So yeah,
If
I
he
don't
could
think
turn
Justin
that
Upton is the
up,
guy.
like if he could get, a little bit better production at the plate, I think he could be a valuable asset.
Right.
Definitely, especially
Be more consistent
in the playoffs. Like when you got a guy who comes in, he's batting let's say 275, but he can hit that home run. He can hit that big one whenever you need it. Could be a great pinch hitter situationally in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think he could help a team like that, but he's got to get there, and right now it's going to take a lot of work at the plate.
Right now he's in the minors, and
because
of course,
the average is just too low to even take a chance on him.
Yeah. I mean, it's either hit or miss. It's either he's going to strike out or he's going to hit a big pop, but he's not really going to drive runners in or play small ball or anything like that. He's not that type of player and never have been. So I don't know what's up with the Angels, but I hate that for Mike Trout. And it looks like he probably won't make the playoffs again unless they find a way to get hot and get into a wild card position. But they're not going to catch the Astros. And real quick before we move on, just how hard it is. You know, these hitting streaks that we witnessed not long ago with Trey Turner for the Dodgers got to 25 games, and Paul Goldschmidt for the Cardinals got to 25 games. And it's a reason why the media does not make too much of a hoopla over hitting streaks until they get to like maybe 40 games. What Pete Rose got to like 40, 41 at one time when he was going after Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. I mean, so 25 games, as hard as it is to hit a baseball, again, like I've said on a number of occasions, I mean, tell me a sport where it's good, where you're actually looked at as being good when you get 3 out of 10 hits and you're batting 300. But I knew those hitting streaks were going to be snapped before 30 games, and I was just enjoying what they were doing, but no one would ever get to a 56-game hitting streak.
You know why? I mean,
it's just so hard these days,
man.
It's
not just that. If you look at baseball, you know, how it was taught when you were growing up compared to how it was taught when I was growing up, compared to how they teach it now, it's just totally different. Launch angles are different. The swing is different. You've added a rotational aspect to hitting when hitting used to be only linear. You know, there's not those guys anymore like an Ichiro who will go up there and they're not afraid to slap the ball anywhere out into the field.
Tony Gwynn, see the ball, hit the ball.
It's a great example of, you know, hitting the ball directionally and using, every bit of the field to his advantage and not just always trying to hit the big one.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, too, Eddie, to your point about that as well, with the shift and all that these days, it's harder to sneak those balls through the infield, you know. And then with the pitchers being as dominant and as powerful as they are, with the type of pitches they're throwing, with all that movement, it's just hard. I mean, you go up there, you might have a 25-game hitting streak, but then you're going to have that 0-for-4 game, and that's exactly what happened to, I know, Trey Turner, and I think Goldschmidt as well, because they didn't have a hit. So that's what happened right there. Hey, but we're going to move on. Of course, we're going to talk some – hey, you know what? Let's get into the NBA right now, man. And Tiger Woods is not playing in the U.S. Open, and I don't blame him. He needs to get healthy. He's won 3 majors, 3 U.S. Opens in his time. He's missed the cut 5 times. He's finished in the top 7, I think, 5 times, but he hasn't placed in that event since 2013. So he's probably going to play in the British Open, but he has to get healthy. But right now, Tiger Woods is playing with house money. The guy is sitting on 15 majors. I don't know if he'll ever be able to get back to where he's going to win another major. Every time I see him go out and play, I think he has that opportunity because he's playing, but he's just had too many surgeries right now, man, and every part of his body is sore right now.
Yeah, he's going to pick and choose when he plays, and hopefully he can rest up. All I know is golf is better when Tiger's swinging the club.
Hey, that's it. And as far as, before we get into some NBA, then we're going to talk some NFL. I want to get Eddie's take on Deshaun Watson.
Dirty
and that
Deshaun.
scandal. And that scandal that's going on right now. Deshaun is in a lot of trouble.
You can officially call him a dirty dog.
Hey, you know what?
Because, hey, I'm just saying,
degree.
he's in Cleveland. They are the dog pound. You can officially call him a dirty dog.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other people, before we talk about that, there's a lot of other people I think is dirty in that situation as well. But I'll hold those comments for later.
Well, I'd imagine when you're talking about massage, therapy, accusations, nobody's hands are clean.
Nobody's hands are clean.
But
we'll definitely talk about that. You want to talk about it now?
Hey, we are going to get into the NBA Finals.
Let's get into the NBA Finals.
Right now, we've got a good series brewing, I think, between what I would call an underdog Celtics team against a seasoned champ in the Golden State Warriors. And the way both games broke down, you look at Game 1 compared to Game 2, I think they're very similar, with the exception of, in Game 1 you had Al Horford and Marcus Smart essentially going off in the fourth quarter and propelling Boston to this epic comeback.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say about Game 1 that Boston established is that even though Golden State came with their patented third quarter haymaker, Boston was able to withstand that, get back up, take that right on the chin, and then somehow pull out a victory. I think even in that game, had they gotten close, morally, Golden State would have been like, damn, these guys, we're not going to be able to knock them out in the third quarter. We're going to have to put together 4 good, solid defensive quarters to beat Boston. But they came back and won it, and I think that changed the tone for the whole series. A series we all thought could be 5 or 6 game series because of just how good Golden State really is.
I still think it'll be Golden State in 6, Eddie, and if you give me more time to think about it, it may be a gentleman's sweep. And I honestly feel that way now. No disrespect to Boston.
Basically, Greg saying it hasn't changed his feeling about the series.
It hasn't changed my feelings one bit. And I'll tell you what, to backtrack, hey, I'll tell you this. Before the series started, and I don't know who wins, I think they split. I heard someone say this earlier, and I agree. I think they actually split in these next 2 games, and I don't know which one, but I think they split. But Golden State is such a great road team. Golden State may come out there and take both of these games, but Boston is going to be feisty, and they're going to get some calls from the refs the next game. So, but I still think they split. But I still think ultimately Golden State wins in no more than 6 games. But I'll tell you like this: before the series started, Eddie, and I was hearing all this talk leading up to it about Boston's defense, how great Boston's defense is. True enough, great defense. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, damn, is Golden State ranked? Do they have the second best defense in the NBA or the 22nd best defense? Because I keep hearing about Boston's defense, and I know when Golden State wants to bring it, they're up in your clothes. I'm talking about like they played in game 2. And so I kept saying, okay, maybe that's going to motivate Golden State in this first game to really bring that energy on the defensive side of the ball and show that they're the defensive juggernaut in this series. And not only the defensive juggernaut in this series, but you talk about Marcus Smart, the defensive player of the year. Okay, a dog. I love Marcus Smart. But I'm looking at it before the series. Okay, Golden State, you talking about Marcus Smart. Okay, Golden State probably has the best defensive player of all time in Draymond Green. I mean, what are we doing here? We're talking about the second best defense in the league, and all you're talking about is Boston's defense. Boston defense. Okay, cool. So, and you're talking about Draymond Green, who that's why I never waned on my pick during the season about Golden State, even when times got rough. I remember when me, you, and Brett were in here, and we were picking the teams to go to the finals, and I stuck with Golden State, even though Draymond wasn't playing at the time, and Clay wasn't. I mean, not Clay, but Steph wasn't playing at the time. But I said I'm gonna hold out before I move off the Golden State pick until I see how Draymond comes back from the back injury. And he came back full throttle, energized, playing tremendous defense, things of that sort. And we'll talk about his antics here in a bit. But so game 1 comes along, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, as the game is going on, why in the world? Now, credit to Boston. One thing about Boston that I think Golden State went into game 1 thinking that they were the only team that had that tremendous ball movement and could make that last pass and do things like that and have that motion. And I think in game 1, they probably thought Boston was a team that was going to come in there and they were going to play a lot of isolation ball with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But what they realized was early on that Boston also can play some team basketball. Even though Jason Tatum didn't have a big scoring game, he still found a way to get other players involved. I think with Golden State,
a lot of times when you play that isolation ball against Golden State, really you're playing right into their hands.
That's true.
That's what they want you to do.
Right. And so I think Golden State kind of went into game 1 kind of thinking, okay, it's probably going to be an isolation ball team. But what surprised me, to my point I was making about all the hoopla and hype that the Boston Celtics defense was getting before the series, I thought that would motivate Golden State even going into game 1 to say, hold on, we won 3 championships and we probably have the best defensive on-ball defender to ever play the game who can guard 5 positions, and all you're talking about is Marcus Smart and the Celtics who've never won nothing. Granted, they're a great defensive team, but I thought going into game 1 that the Warriors would take that into account and really come out with guns blazing and really come out there and really want to show and prove that they are the juggernaut on defense. And I was surprised. I was very surprised and disappointed to see how many open shots they were giving the Celtics. And I just thought Golden State got too cocky when they got that 12-point lead. I said to myself, you cannot get that cocky in the sense where you come out in the my bad. I'm feeling it right now.
He's old.
You come out,
Man.
you come out old and ready. Hey, you come out in the fourth quarter and you take your foot off the gas, and you cannot do that. And I thought that's what they did. I thought they got real complacent, very cocky. And what happened was they were not closing out on these shooters. They were not rotating whatsoever. And this is a professional basketball team you're playing against. I mean, these guys were knocking down open shots like it was nothing. And I tell you this, man, in game 2, that was a different story. I think Golden State, they came out ready to show and prove. They were not going to give you that airspace to get off all these shots, and they just came with a different energy in game 2. And, of course, they were making shots, too. Steph was
They were
more than
definitely
anything.
able to finish. Now, you talk about the style of play with Boston. They're going to move the ball around, and turnovers have been a problem for them, and turnovers lead to Golden State transition possessions, and you don't want to play the Warriors in transition. They are one of the best, if not the best, transition scoring basketball team in the league, and they have been for, the past decade, it feels like.
Yeah.
Those guys can get up and down the floor when you're turning over the basketball. You're playing right into their hands. You're dealing them, hit top pair on the first draw. You're really playing a game you can't win. Now, if they can protect the basketball, they can play their offense. I think they're tough enough, and mentally I think they can challenge the Warriors enough to where the Warriors will make those mental mistakes we've seen them make. Draymond Green will get those technical fouls, and he will get frustrated. He will do some of those things that are borderline Bush League that he's been accused of doing before. Like I read an article trying to pull a player's pants down, things like that. Just things that you can tell where they're clearly getting inside of Draymond Green's head. And while it may not,
I don't think so.
May not lead to the Warriors losing, those can cause him to make mistakes like fouls, like technical fouls, that can hurt the Warriors, and we've seen it bite them in the past. Especially if he ends up suspended or something.
I think last game, actually, in my humble opinion, I think last game Draymond actually got into their heads. Now, granted, he has to be the one careful because now they're probably going to try to bait him because of all the noise he's talking about. He already has
the rep, so it's on him.
But we'll talk about that in a second too.
But you know how the NBA is going to look at it. And referees are known to go with what they know already. And if he's known to cause trouble and be the guy that gets teed up, guess what? He always finds a way to get teed up. And it wouldn't be the first finals where that's had an impact
because
he
probably cost them a finals against Cleveland a while back.
It's not like he's inflappable, in his mind.
Absolutely, but what I think it is, I think what he did in the last game, he set the tone. He set the tone big time, and I think the Warriors fed off that. Now, granted, I think they were playing with some desperation because I was saying, hey, you cannot go down 0-2 against the Celtics. Now, I don't want to sit here and act like the Celtics are not a formidable opponent because I said as much on the last show. The Celtics are very formidable, and they're very good, and they're going to come out with a lot of energy in this next game, and they're going to try to avenge the way they played in the last game. They're going to try to be more physical, and they're already whining to the referees in their own way about – I listened to Jaylen Brown after the game talking in the interview, and he was talking about how they need to meet the physicality of Golden State. Yeah, but then he found a way to throw in there as well. I think they got away with a lot. Got you right there. You're trying to cry to the refs right there, but then he moved on from it. But that's what you do. That's what the coaches and players do in every NBA finals, no matter who the player or coach is. And then you look at Udoka. He got up there, Ime Udoka, and he pretty much said the same thing, that he thought they were getting away with a lot. So he's already posturing and trying to get the refs. So in this next game, going back to Boston, with as much tradition as the Boston Celtics have and this and that, and of course,
calls might be going their way.
Calls are definitely going to be going their way.
And
one of the top two players for Golden State will have 2 fouls within the first 2 minutes. Top 2 defensive players, whether it's Andrew Wiggins or whether it's Draymond Green. But Draymond, to your point about Draymond has to be careful in the sense, and I listened to some people talk. I listen to Stephen A. and all these guys talk, and J.J. Redick, and then I listen to Skip and Shannon. I listen to all these guys talk about Draymond. And the thing about it is, sure, he cannot lose that edge. But the word I always say, posturing. You cannot posture like that in front of these refs, because at some point the referees are going to feel like they're getting punked. So for you to come out there and say all the things you're saying, yeah, it's okay for you to know that, hey, I have to set the tone and all this and that. But again, if these refs feel like they're being punked, they're going to go against the grain in this next game, especially just to show you you are not controlling how they're going to officiate the game. Now, they know that you matter and the ratings matter and all this and that. But I think he has to tone it back a bit and voicing those opinions. I really agree in that sense that he has to tone it back a bit and voicing that opinion because, again, this thing called posturing, and you know these refs are going to come out there that next game and they're going to really be looking for him to do something where they can blow the whistle on him and at least get him one tech, and then they're going to sit there and watch him and be like, okay, now try us this game. If you do anything, which I don't think that should have warranted a second tech when he fell back and accidentally, I don't think that was much to do about nothing, that thing with Jaylen Brown right there. But I think they're going to be watching this game more closely, and as soon as he does anything, hey, simply don't test the referees, Draymond Green. Don't test them. Be fiery, be yourself, but you have to realize, first of all, don't get one tech, and then you don't have to worry about getting a second tech. Don't do anything to get thrown out of the basketball game, but still bring that fire, bring that competitiveness, and we shall see.
I feel like Boston's going to go right after him, trying to get him
They are.
unfocused. And especially when he gets in one of those games where it becomes a battle of Draymond against somebody else. You know, with the Rockets, it was him and P.J. Tucker going at it game after game. But whenever it becomes more about that for Draymond, you notice he's already not the offensive player he was in the past. Then you see his offense production go down even more, I think, when he gets in one of those. He gets in one of those spit bats with somebody else. But if he think about it, if Draymond gets to where he's getting double-digit points consistently again, dude, they're hard to beat whenever he's hitting 3 threes a game and he's getting some putbacks and 15
I'm glad
points
you brought that
here
up.
and there. You're not getting that from him very much anymore, and that's a big deal. He needs to stay focused.
And what did I text you?
That's how he can help the Warriors.
He definitely has to stay focused, but he still needs to bring that intensity on the defense side of the ball. And like I've always said, going back years on the show, talking about sports.
He's like a pit bull. He's going to protect the court. You just don't know what he's going to do.
But you know what, too, though? And
he
the thing
might
about
go off
is,
the chain and get a little crazy and bite somebody.
Might.
And if he
But
does, that's a problem for Golden State.
Hey, but you know what? And what I'll say about that is, Draymond, he has to be that energizer, and he has to stay focused. I agree with that, but he cannot let that passion wane. And you just have to continue to bring that energy. But what I was going to say, at this point in his career, obviously Draymond Green is who he is as an offensive player. But I think one of the reasons, too, not only was it inevitable that they come out and they win, and they win that game, too, but the way he played on the offensive side of the ball, man, at this point in his career, you would think he would be at least a little bit better in shooting the basketball. He's a brick waiting to happen. Now, granted, I've seen him knock down some of those threes from time to time, but as hard of a worker as you are, as hard as a worker as he is, man, he is a terrible shooter.
And then he was missing Lloyd. The form has gotten uglier.
Huh?
The form when he shoots has gotten ugly.
It really has. It really has. And my thing is, bro, what are you working on in the offseason? Are you just not working on your shot at all? Because it's almost sometimes with him out there, at least as far as shooting the ball, it's like playing 4-on-5. That first game, and I can see it during the game because he missed a couple of bunnies at the rim, a couple of layups. And I'm saying to myself, I think Draymond is feeling real bad about what he's bringing them on offense tonight. And again, the defense was putrid in that first game. Now, in game 3, we know Boston is going to come out there and they're going to really try to set the tone defensively. But no matter what the refs do, I think if Golden State plays their A game and they come out with that same intensity and that same fervor and focus on the defensive side of the ball. I've been saying this for years, and it's no secret to anybody what wins championships. And I've always said when I've talked about upcoming series and this and that, even in college basketball, whoever brings the tenacity on the defensive side of the ball. Because that's going to enhance your offense. Even if your shots are not falling on the offensive side of the ball, if you bring that tenacity on the defensive side of the ball, your offense can capitalize off of that. And then but you have to bring it on defense. So I think if Golden State
we just talked about how big
brings it on
how big
defense,
they play off of turnovers and how important points off of turnovers.
You see how many turnovers they force
is for them.
Slapping at the ball.
If I'm Boston, I'm looking at this series. Before we move on a little bit. I'm thinking Boston's goal just has to be to get this to a Game 7. I can see them doing that. We could easily see them splitting these two in Boston, going back to California where they've got a 1-1-1. They're going to go back and forth. I could easily see this series going 7. And if that happens, then the Celtics are looking at a one-game series. They've got to win one game for an NBA championship. And I think we've already seen in Game 1 that they've got a legitimate puncher's chance if they can put themselves in that position.
Yeah.
It's going to take them taking care of the basketball.
Yeah.
It's going to take them playing smart basketball. And it's going to take them being able to get up in Steph Curry's face and defend him. They can't let him shoot them out of the gym. That is a big – the guy he's a sharpshooter. He's lethal.
Right.
They've got to make it very difficult for him. They got to get creative
and they
in the
will.
ways they make it difficult for him because obviously the guy can't – he's good enough to put you out early. I mean, we've seen him go off 7, 8 3-pointers and a half, and then now you're looking at a 20-point deficit. And in this series, I know we've seen them come back, but as you get deeper in this series, they can ill afford to find themselves in that position too many times. I mean, you've only got so much comeback in you, especially against a great team like the Warriors who, let's say you're down 15 points, just when you start getting close, say you get within 6 or 7, they can put a couple threes on you and take the lead right back up to 13.
Like I said a few weeks ago,
That's how lethal they are.
What happens when they start hitting shots from half court, which Jordan Poole did, and Jordan Poole in Game 1, I thought he was out of control. And going back to Game 1 real quick, I didn't think Steve Kerr coached a good game. I mean, I didn't think he allowed them to get a rhythm. I thought he set Steph Curry way too much. I mean, this is the playoffs. Your rotation has to change. Now, I know you're cocky and things like that, and you're arrogant, and you feel that you can beat anybody and things like that. But when the playoffs roll around, your attitude has to change, and you have to become more desperate. I mean, these guys have had like a week off, so why in the hell is Steph Curry sitting that much during Game 1? I just thought the rotation was discombobulated. I don't think it was right, and I just didn't think it really gave Golden State a chance to really get into a rhythm. Of course, the intensity wasn't there as well. I also think a big factor in Game 2 was the insertion of Gary Payton II. I think his defensive intensity also rubbed off on a lot of the players, along with Draymond Green bringing the intensity. But I was asking where he was in Game 1.
He tries to bring that 90s tough style of basketball that his dad played and talks about all the time.
Right.
And that's definitely a boost for Golden State. But I think that the reason you might have seen Steph sitting is because Boston's not dumb. They understand that if they were fighting a war against Golden State, the weakest point of their front line is Steph Curry, and offensively they're going to attack him. So I could see him getting a little bit.
He was cooking
a little bit extra. Rest.
And it's like Steve Kerr cooled him down.
So, I understand that, but we're talking about probably the most seasoned big game coach at the NBA level right now.
I love Steve Kerr. Yeah.
I mean,
I knew he would make the adjustments.
He went with his gut, and it turns out that you had a couple of role players go off for Boston, and sometimes that just happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Harden was on the bench back when Josh Smith had that big fourth quarter against the Clippers that ended up leading to one of Doc Rivers' 3-1 series lead, one of his 3-1 losses to the Rockets, and it was a fourth quarter comeback fueled by, of all people, Josh Smith going off, scoring like 19 points or something like that in one quarter. Sometimes that stuff is just going to happen.
Yeah.
But I can see why.
You can't let them walk into three-pointers like that,
The Celtics are going to try to take advantage of Steph Curry. I mean, at some point in time, teams are going to be able to take advantage of these weak defenses that they have to play because they cannot play man with Steph Curry. They have to play.
Well, they started doing a lot of pick and roll and a lot of right. And, I mean,
he's
what the
just
Warriors
such a
do,
defensive liability, but he's so good on offense.
and he's not as much of a defensive liability as he was when he came to the league.
You don't even really notice it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Steph has gotten real strong. He works out. He's in tremendous shape. So I think that defensive liability tag is kind of overrated and overstated in my opinion with Steph Curry at this point in his career.
The stats are there to back it up. Every team goes after him.
Well, I mean, they do, but at the same time, I mean, I think they help and rotate so well. Steph still holds his own. Like, they don't just push him around like they did say 5 years ago when he was in the league and he was a scrawny kid. Now he has some muscle to him, and he's holding his own at the point of attack more often, and it's not as easy to move him off. It's not as easy to move him off.
He's just not as fast on the defense. It seems like he's way faster with the basketball in his hands than he is on defense.
He's not a speed guy.
He looks extremely slow on defense.
Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily agree with that. I'm extremely slow, but that's your opinion.
Well, I think when you look at how he moves with a basketball and how he's able to get to the basket and stuff like that.
Well, he's crafty, and he has nice
he's
footwork.
A lot faster dribbling the basketball than he does playing defense.
Well, I mean, he has nice footwork.
You ask Warrior fans, they'll tell you he's slow sometimes. I mean,
I think Steph has improved as a defensive player. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. He's not a speed guy, but I think he's improved. And then again, in my opinion, what you have to do,
you got to find a spot for him on the floor.
And in my opinion, if the Golden State Warriors, and I'm gonna say this again, and I know Boston is gonna bring the intensity on defense, but I still think at the end of the day, the way Golden State moves the ball and their motion, I still think they'll find a way, just like they did in game 1 and 2, other than that fourth quarter when they laid it down and they started feeling themselves. But I still think they find a way to offset that tenacious Boston's defense. And again, once they start laying those haymakers from 3, we'll see what happens. But they have to keep the intensity up on defense. You cannot let these guys walk in to 3-point shots. We know Boston is going to be playing at home. We know those role players are going to be revving to go and be ready.
We know those floor seats.
Golden State brings that
floor
intensity.
Seats are going to be liquored up.
Yeah, they are.
They're going to be ready to go. Hey, Boston's a tough place to play, man.
And Golden State is one of the best road teams in the NBA. And so that's why I have no doubt that they will at least split. But again, it starts with them not being too cocky and not being too arrogant going into game 3, saying that even if we get down a game, we can come back. They have to play game 3 as if it's a game 7, or they have to play game 3 as if they're down 0-2. I think if the Warriors come out with that mentality, I don't think Boston has a chance. I'm not going to say they don't have a chance, but because they're playing at home and they're very formidable.
Say it with your chest. They don't have a chance.
Oh, shit, though. I am. You know I am. Hey. But that's why I said I still think Golden State.
Boston showed me something in game 1, and I think the series is going 7. I can't tell you how it's going to break down, but I think we're going to be talking about a 7-game series and an all-timer. I don't know how it's going to end, but I'm pulling for Boston.
I'll tell you how it's going to end.
I would love to see them come out on top, rooting for the underdog.
I got you, underdog Eddie. Yeah. I got you. I got nothing wrong with that. I still think Golden State finish them off in 6 or less. I really do. But again, it's only if they come out there and play with the mentality that they should play with every possession like they did in game 2. If they I'm not talking about physicality just by itself. I'm talking about with the mentality. If they come out with that mentality in game 3 and game 4, I think it's going to be tough sledding for Boston. We know Boston is going to come out with the same mentality and this and that. I just think, but at the end of the day, Klay Thompson, who's been hearing it about how bad he's been, Klay is going to go for at least 30 next game. So you're going to have some of these other guys step up on the offensive side of the ball, which I think they will. I think Golden State with that experience, I think they go in there and I think they play at a high level in Boston, but they're going to have some help. Klay is going to have to at least give them 25 to 30 in tomorrow night's game, and I think he will. But because they're going to try to stifle Steph Curry to some degree. They're going to try to hinder what he's been doing, and they're going to try to take some things away. So in the process of doing that, you should know that there's going to be some other guys open. When Wiggins has that 3-point shot, he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he can knock the shot down. You're going to have to knock that shot down. I mean, Klay is going to have to get hot. I mean, these guys are going to have to make some shots, and then these players will have to pay attention to those guys. But Draymond, sometimes on offense, other than initiating the offense and setting the tone, setting screens, and, I mean, trust me, he's definitely well needed on the offensive side of the ball. But if he could just give you anything, if he could just make an open jumper to save his life, I mean, that would definitely help the Warriors. So we shall see. Eddie said it goes 7. I say it goes no more than 6 games, and we shall see again. And if Golden State wins tomorrow night, I say it'll be a gentleman's sweep. That means 5 games, and I honestly feel that way. But that's why they play the games. We can all speculate and make these predictions and all this and that. We'll see what happens in these next couple of few games and see what happens. But right now it's been very interesting. The drama has built, so we shall see what happens moving forward. The game is tomorrow night. 8 p.m. Eastern time, I think it is, Eddie. So we shall see. We shall see, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Real quick, Eddie, before we move on and talk some NFL or whatever you want to talk about, Colorado Avalanche. Now, I'm not a big hockey guy, but I know a little something. You know, I know a little something about hockey. I mean, not as much as I knew when I was playing ball at Ohio State, and a lot of those guys had me watching hockey, especially when the Rangers and back then before I left from up there. I kind of got into hockey for a second, and, of course, when I moved back to Texas where it's hot all the time, you're not going to be thinking about hockey at all. But the Colorado Avalanche, they're using Avalanche to sweep Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And, of course, you have the Rangers going tonight against Tampa Bay. We'll see who wins that series. The Rangers are up 2-1. But I'll tell you this, and kudos to the Colorado Avalanche, but Connor McDavid, he is the real deal. Now, I do know enough about hockey to mention Connor McDavid, who I think is the next Wayne Gretzky. He's the best player in hockey right now. The guy, you're talking about speed, Eddie? The speed that this guy displays on the ice is unbelievable. And the fact that he can maneuver the hockey puck with tremendous speed as well. I mean, for them to get to the Western Conference Finals this year, again, kudos to Colorado. They were just too much for Edmonton right now. But that's a step that Edmonton had to take. They got swept in the first round last year. So now they made it to the Western Conference Finals. You have the best player in the world on your team, and I think the sky's the limit for Edmonton. And, Connor McDavid is the real deal. Here's the real deal. So, hey, but moving on. What's your take on Deshaun Watson, man?
Oh, dirty Deshaun, dirty dog. Hey,
well, I know what your take is.
No, look, I mean, as this whole story got drug out when he was here in Houston, you know, I stood by Deshaun and the possibility that, you know, that there is. Let's wait till all the facts come out. All the facts are still coming out,
right?
But all I know is that I feel like Nick Caserio, as every day that goes by, let me rephrase that. I feel every day that goes by, I feel like Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans feel like they won the Deshaun Watson trade over, you know, 2 times over again and again. Every single day they got to be feeling better and better about the trade because you could have held out hope that maybe he might change his mind and still want to play for the Texans. But this would still be a dark cloud surrounding an organization that's trying to rebuild and trying to start, you know, anew amongst, you know, after the destruction that Bill O'Brien brought forth. And there was no way that was going to happen with Deshaun Watson. Now, fast forward, he goes to Cleveland. And the trade, I thought, you know, I thought the Texans could have gotten more, but hey, they took the 3 first-round picks. They took what they really wanted and they ran with it. Cleveland, where they mucked up the whole situation, is where they gave Deshaun Watson the biggest contract in NFL history.
$230 million guaranteed.
The entire thing, regardless of suspension.
How much guaranteed? Is it?
The entire contract is fully guaranteed. So
he came up
100%. And not only did this, you know, rub some people in the media and people, you know, that are fans the wrong way. It rubbed other NFL owners the wrong way because here they are trying to pay quarterbacks that are clearly the market for them is going up and up and up and up. We talked about this when we talked about the Dak Prescott contract on previous shows. It's always going up. So these owners are trying to keep it down as much as they can. They want to win, and they understand that you get one of these franchise guys, you got to pay them. But at what point does it, you know, surpass 30 and go to 40 and surpass 40 and go to 50? Well, the Cleveland Browns went and said, hey, we're going to give a guy with 22 open lawsuits the biggest contract in NFL history.
What happened?
And now if you're Lamar Jackson or if you're Kyler Murray, you're not even going to suit up until they're giving you
something
45, 47, 48,
so you know
$50 million a year because you don't have any pending lawsuits. You don't have a pending suspension. If that's what a quarterback of Deshaun Watson's ilk is worth, even with all that, then only imagine what Lamar Jackson, an MVP, and a guy who has no off-the-field issues. I mean, just imagine what kind of contract they're trying to command right now. Cleveland really pissed everybody off when they did that.
And you know who else they pissed off?
Now, in the karma court, they're paying for it.
Well, you know who else they pissed off?
Starting to pile on Deshaun Watson.
That's why I'm not necessarily saying that the facts are coming out right now because who knows if they're actually facts right now. And I'm not going to be insensitive to what's going on. I'm definitely not. But real quick, to your point about the contract they gave him, and that's why I've always said on the show, and of course, you know, public perception means a lot, and public relations and things of that sort. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is if you can play, we're going to give you a chance. Unless you've killed someone, and even in situations like that where they thought it was probably an accident, they've still given people a chance. But I mean, the fact that he didn't get charged criminally, I think that helped the Browns really say, okay, well, we're going to take our chances with the public relations hit and just go for what we know. But since that has happened, to your point about the facts right now, or the so-called facts about what's happening is, and I don't know, man. My thing is the 23rd and 24th, hell, why don't you go and make it 30? I mean, what's really going on? And again, I've said on a number of occasions, every time we've talked about this, and in no way, please hear me out, in no way am I not taking the seriousness of this, of what's being alleged to have been done, the seriousness of these allegations. In no way am I pushing them to the background or not taking them seriously or things of that sort. I know how serious it is. I know if he is guilty of this, of all of this, he should be held accountable. He's still going to get suspended. He may even get suspended for an entire year. But to your point about people being pissed off, now all of a sudden is the 23rd and 24th woman. Again, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but the more people come out and say that, okay, he did this, he did that, the timing of it is questionable. I've always said that from day one. The timing of it is questionable. And it's just so dramatic, man. I mean, not saying that it didn't happen on a few occasions or more than a few occasions. And hell, it's a possibility that it happened on all the occasions. But I will continue to say, now, one of the ladies, and again, I wish her well. I wish all these victims or alleged victims well. And I do not wish anything bad on them. And if these are true allegations, if these allegations are true about Deshaun Watson, he should be punished to the fullest. But a guy that had that reputation going into this, now, of course, we all know women. Women can bring on a different mindset because you know what they say. You know what they say. You know what's a man's biggest downfall. And I don't have to say the word, but it is what it is. So, that, I mean, some people think with that instead of with their head, and maybe they're saying that's what Deshaun Watson was doing. Well, so, but it's hard to really. Here's my point, Eddie. Here's what I want to get to about the 23rd and the 24th woman that's come out right now and said, okay, yada yada yada. Okay, all right. So where were they at before? For one, okay, and two, one of the ladies said, well, put it like this, I think they're getting coached up very well by Tony Busby. I mean, as a matter of fact, too. But one of the ladies come out and said that, okay, well, the reason she's coming out now is because she heard him say in a recent interview how he's moved on and he hasn't done anything wrong and he feels good about where he is in the situation and that made her mad because he says he's moved on and he hasn't done anything wrong. Well, damn, he said that back when they first started the situation. So why is she just coming out now? And I'm going to harp on this until the cows come home. All these allegations, you mean, and then she said, and again, not throwing any shade her way. I'm just, and some might say, man, be careful. You might be committing career. So, well, boo-hoo, cry me a river. I mean, hell. So my thing is, too, she made sure to say after the second visit he did that because you can't say after the first visit that happened. And I know there's people that say where there's smoke, there's fire. But, that's true in a lot of cases. But like I've always said, too, on a number, I mean, also, sometimes what you think might be smoke might be the remnants of cold ice that you think is smoke. It might be the remnants of cold ice. And I'm saying it like this. So she made it a point to say after the second time is when he did this and did that. My point is, and some of the allegations that they're saying right now, that he ejaculated on one of the women and all this and that. Okay, if all this is happening, for one, still no camera evidence, you can't tell me out of all these allegations. Also, comes out today that the Texans set him up with a lot of these situations with, and they put him in a hotel or they set him up with all this, had him have a non-disclosure form and have all this. But it's mighty funny after he decided. So the Texans knew about all this when they initially said they had no idea that all this was going on. They actually had him set up for most of these massages, for a whole lot of these massages. And so after he decides he wants out, then all of a sudden he's charged with all this. Tony Busby, all this is coming out. But here's my point again, and I don't hear people talking about this. I know some people are going to say, oh, well, I mean, it's a place of business. If a place of business is supposed to be that legit, they're that legit, and I know it's privacy and this and that. You mean to tell me out of all these allegations, you do not have not one of these incidents on camera? And I'm not even talking about the sound. I'm just talking about the video itself. Out of all these incidents, not one of these incidents are on camera.
Well, it's funny.
Explain that to me.
It makes me laugh because when you
and
talk
why
about,
did they run away from the situation after it all happened? And again, I don't want to sound like, but my point is, why, if all this happened where he ejaculated on the girl, supposedly, why didn't she come out and say something then? After that happened, if you're so traumatized, why? Again, I don't want to sound insensitive. I apologize if I am sounding insensitive, and I'm not. But I'm just taking the other side of it right quick. I'm not going to, because we know how cold people can be. Why didn't none of these women come out after all these incidents, alleged incidents? Why didn't they come out at the time and make it be known?
Well, I'm going to try to cover everything you covered there in the last 5 or so minutes.
Try to, please.
Yeah. As far as them coming forward, when it comes to sexual assault, it's well known that women, they're embarrassed about it. They come forth in their own time. I mean, not everybody who comes forth months and months later, it doesn't mean that they're being dishonest.
All 24.
I'm not saying all 24. Right now, we might be talking about case number 24. But here's the deal with Deshaun Watson. Whether or not the Texans know, and it doesn't matter. It's really not the Texans' problem anymore. They traded that problem away for 3 first-round picks, and right now it looks like they got the better end of the deal. Where the problem comes up for Deshaun Watson, you talk about, where are the cameras from this place of business?
Yeah.
I would say, what places of business? Deshaun Watson sought out women on Instagram who do this like independently. So we're not talking about massages at Massage Envy, where there may be cameras. No, I mean, he sought out with the new article out of the New York Times by
no
Jenny.
cameras were available.
Well, what I'm saying is that it doesn't surprise me that there's no video available whenever you're working with independent people that are self-employed.
I disagree, but okay.
Number 2.
I'm not saying in every situation, but come on. Okay.
Number 2 with Deshaun Watson, where he starts to get into some troubling waters. The Jenny Vrenta's article says that he sought out 66 women in 17 months, and that the majority of these women are going to come out and say that Deshaun Watson pushed to try to turn those massages sexual.
Yeah.
Now maybe,
and I'm not saying it didn't happen in a lot of cases.
And then
I just don't think all cases happen.
But and then you have, well, hopefully not in all cases, because then we'd be talking about 66 cases of sexual assault, not 24. And who knows how many more are to come. Now, hang on. Now, let me keep going here. With Rusty,
no camera evidence.
Where it gets bad.
Nobody said nothing.
Where it gets worse for Deshaun Watson. And look, we know this too. It's not, perception is reality. They don't necessarily have
sometimes
to. Perception is reality.
Sometimes. That's a nice saying. It sounds cute, but I got you.
Yeah, but you're telling me that if you polled America right now, how many of them do you think would say they think Deshaun Watson's guilty? Say the majority might say
phrase it like guilty. This. How many of y'all think he's guilty of all these cases?
That's based on perception. But if you're,
what I'm saying is, I think it's a money grab for a lot of them.
If he's guilty of one, Greg, then that makes
that
him.
That doesn't make him guilty of all 20. So quit coming out here saying,
I get that.
Okay, he did this to me.
If
he
he's
did this to me.
guilty of one, it makes him a bad guy. That's what I'm saying. And then you look at Cleveland. Okay. They just gave him all this money. You don't think that if they're able to prove that he sexually assaulted one girl, it wouldn't make Deshaun Watson a bad guy?
No, I'm not saying that. But I'm talking about how dramatic it's turned into, and I just think it's a lot of BS with a lot of this.
You know the world that we live in, but he's not.
Of course,
Deshaun Watson's not doing himself any favors when you got your lawyer, and they know that when they get into the depositions that it's going to come out that he tried to turn all these massages sexual. You got your lawyer going on the radio saying that happy endings technically aren't illegal and basically condoning what is just a sleazy act. It makes
that was a bad statement.
It makes this whole thing kind of sound just disgusting, even from
I'll say this.
Even anybody who lives a wild kind of lifestyle. You can't. Rusty Harden, for all that money that they're paying him, I was like, damn, I can't believe he just said that.
Right.
And then so you're already setting the tone
Deshaun Watson,
that you're going to find out that, hey, my client might be a sleazeball, but he's not guilty of a crime. Well, wait a minute.
Well, no.
They're not in criminal court. They're in civil court.
Right.
So it's going to be up to a jury to decide how sleazy Deshaun really was.
If all this allegedly happened, and again, he may be a sleazeball, but I'm just talking about the totality, and I just think a lot of this is BS. I think Tony Busby is a slime ball. I don't like the timing of how it originated from the start. As soon as he said he wanted out, now it comes out today that the Texans actually knew about this massage
players
and
have
set him
access
up.
to
My
hotels
point is,
that the team have.
I don't think, and like you said,
that they're
okay, if he did
associated with.
one, I've said from day one, yeah, maybe he did one, maybe he did four, maybe he did five, and he should be held accountable for it. But come on, man. What's going to be next? A 25th woman is going to come out because she wants some money?
I can almost guarantee there's going to be a 25th.
I mean, come on,
but
nobody in the process of all this happening, if Deshaun Watson was so bad, you're telling me not one of those women, and I get it,
but
that of course they all react in their own way.
He may not have been so bad, but he may have been just bad enough to where, look, we're talking about a guy that is major celebrity, and a lot of these women that he's reaching out to on Instagram, they're average people. On the woman, they're average people like you and me. They may not want to go into a legal battle with Deshaun Watson, because he's a millionaire and they're just an average self-employed.
I would say that
masseuse.
if it was a couple or two or three, but 24, 25.
But
now
Greg,
he's signing
when you have this kind of pattern of behavior, you're going to get that. I mean, you look. I hate to correlate it to child abuse, but you see the same thing when one guy gets accused of. Or one, like say somebody gets accused of child abuse, you'll see the victim slowly but surely start to trickle out. And it's not because they didn't say anything, because nothing happened.
No, and I'm not saying it didn't. I still do not believe that it happened with all of the women that filed lawsuits. There were no criminal charges. So I think my argument right now may hold some merit. I think right now at where we're at in this investigation, I think my argument and my stance on it, I'm not saying I'm correct completely. Again, I think he's done some bad things, and of course he did some of those things. But there was a criminal investigation, and so
here's the deal,
bro. I still think, and I'm gonna be real when I say this, because I'm not gullible like that. I just don't believe anything I hear, even though I do believe that probably happened to a degree. I just don't think. And again, I agree that if it happened to one, he should be held accountable, and he's gonna get suspended because he's dealing with women. But I think Tony Busby is a slime ball, and I think he's coaching some of these women up. And the thing about it, you listen to some of these women, and again, I wish them well. Because I'm getting amped up. I don't want to sound like I'm against the women. I wish them well, and I hope that mentally they're okay more than anything. I honestly do. This is not about them. I'm just talking about in a general sense more than anything.
Greg,
I've seen too many times.
Here's where I start to get worried, and I understand where you're coming from. Here's where I start to get worried as this whole thing has gone from the very beginning of it. We've been here from the beginning, covered this from the beginning with Deshaun Watson.
Yes, sir.
We get into this now. We're finding out that this 24th woman, this lawsuit that's been filed by this 24th woman, he being Deshaun Watson, has this high-priced attorney in Rusty Hardin. Yeah. And apparently the attorneys have never heard this woman's name. So either one, like Greg said, she might be lying. But if we find out a massage took place and something took place, but hear me out here, Greg.
24 women.
Hear me out, though. If we find out that a massage took place and something sexual took place between this woman and Deshaun Watson, and he didn't let his multi-million-dollar attorney, Rusty Hardin, know about it, this is their first time hearing this woman's name, then I start to wonder, I start to ponder, my mama raised me to be a thinking man, Greg, and I start to think, why would he hide that encounter from Rusty Hardin? Why would he allow them to be blindsided by this? Because if it comes out, phone records show that they had this encounter and something happened, and then it's going to paint Deshaun in a very, very bad light. People are going to start wondering, what was he trying to hide from even his own lawyer group and his own attorney and Rusty Hardin by not letting them know about this possible 24th case?
Well, on the flip side of that,
and also, Greg, real quick, that opens up. I don't want to say
where was she again.
That opens up the possibility for a new grand jury, because this is technically new evidence that a grand jury did not hear the last time they heard a bill on Deshaun Watson. I just want to throw that out there. It opens up the possibility for a new charge,
like you said,
to be a new indictment.
Like you said, the contract and things of that sort. But I just don't like the timing of some of it. And again, I don't believe that all these cases are true. I just think a lot of these women are getting coached up when you listen. And, of course, your lawyer is supposed to coach you up to a degree. But I just think a lot of it, when you listen to a lot of them, it sounds very compelling. And if you're not really, like, looking at both sides of it, you're really – I'm talking about the totality of all of them being true. I'm not saying some of them – of course, we know he played quarterback, and I'm sure he went in there trying to see what the vibe was and who he can come up on and all this and that, who he could get with in a lot of cases, maybe more times than he should. And I would like to know the vibe in a lot of those cases if a lot of those women were actually a lot of these women that's actually alleging this, if they were actually leading him on, or if it was more to it than they're saying that they allowed, that now they've retracted on. I don't know. But again,
ultimately, a jury's going to decide.
Yeah, and he did not get charged criminally, so I can't come in here and just be like, okay, well, I agree to this. All 24 women are telling the truth. Now it's 24. So what, it'll be 25 next week. Just because I think they're looking up every massage. They're looking up every time he's had a massage, and they're just contacting these people and being like, hey, shoot, you want to make some money? I think in a lot of cases, that's really what's happening, man. And I'm not going to apologize for saying how I really feel about the situation, even though, and I'm going to say it again, I'm very, very sensitive to the seriousness of these allegations by Deshaun Watson. And he definitely has not painted himself in a good light. But I just don't believe that the totality of it is I just think it's a money grab in a lot of these cases.
For Watson's sake, let's hope that is the case, and his NFL career will
he's going to get suspended, Eddie.
And here's the deal with that, too, is like how long? Because the more that comes out, the more the public is going to cry for a heavy suspension for Deshaun Watson.
Probably a full year.
I think that initially we thought it was going to be 6 games. Now I don't see how it can be less than a year. Just based, I know that
next week something else going to come out.
That's the thing, but it's a never-ending nightmare for the NFL, for Deshaun Watson, and for the Cleveland Browns. Peter King went on ProFootballTalk.com yesterday and talked about how the Browns are in full-on, damage control mode because this has been an unmitigated disaster ever since they. Yeah. Look, if Deshaun Watson ends up sitting out however long he has to sit out and win them a Super Bowl, ultimately they'll tell you behind closed doors it was all worth it. But I don't think that they anticipated that this was going to continuously be a growing problem where the number was going to increase. They thought that Deshaun had already told them this is as many possible victims as there could be.
That's
or
Tony
cases.
Busby, bro.
Hey, we'll find out where this thing goes.
He's contacting everybody he's had a massage
but
by.
All I know, Greg, if real evidence comes out and Deshaun Watson does end up being found criminally guilty or even civilly liable for this,
I would change my tune if some evidence came out.
The point that I'm trying to make is it just would, to me, amount to one of the most epic falls from grace ever, and then one that took a path that I don't think we've ever seen one take before, where a guy is, sort of forces his way out somewhere where he already got a what was really a nice contract from the Houston Texans at the time, forces his way out, faces all these allegations. You never know which way they could go. Then it looks like the arrow is going nothing but up. No bill on the indictment for Deshaun Watson in Harris County. No bill on the one in, where was it, Fort Bend County or whatever other county it was that they tried to indict him in. And things are only pointing up. But then now the closer we get to the season, it's like all of a sudden Deshaun Watson has hit a wall, and now it's just obstacle after obstacle.
I know, man.
And I'm not sure, how this is going to affect him as a player, how it's going to affect the team. Because look, a lot of those guys, they have wives. Those wives have opinions, and let me tell you something. Those players' wives' opinions and the opinions of their kids and stuff like that carry some weight, and so there is going to be some, divisiveness in the locker room and early on while players try to feel out. If it was just what Deshaun did on the field as a comrade, as a leader, he's 100% one of the top 5 guys on the planet to be that guy, but there's just a little bit more to it. It's a more sensitive situation.
It is.
Deshaun put himself in this situation.
He did.
How good of a leader he really is, we're going to find out, and how he's able to bring the Browns together, if he's able to bring them, to a point where we thought Baker.
I think that's another thing that played
where we thought Baker could get him, but clearly he can't, and that's why they moved on to Watson, because Watson's supposed to get them over the hump.
Right. And I think another reason why Eddie.
But if he doesn't command the locker room, and if this team's not able to gel because half of them are like maybe maybe feel like you feel and think it's a bunch of hoopla, and half of them are like, man, well, I got a wife and she thinks that I need to feel this way, and you know what, I stand up for women and this, that, and I'm not still sure if Deshaun's telling us the truth.
Right.
So, and then once players feel like they're being lied to, they're not gonna treat that guy as a leader. They'll play with him.
But what I think will happen,
that's what leads to a lot of 10-6 seasons, but no championships. You know,
but I think
no
what
real
will happen,
accolades.
Right. I think what would happen is, I think the fact, one of the reasons too they signed him is because not only could Baker not get them there, but I think the fact that they are already set up to win it all if they have a tremendous quarterback. And it's like, okay, Deshaun Watson's here. He's not going to be in jail from what it looks like right now. And it has snowballed since then. I agree with that. And as far as Deshaun Watson and the players, I think in a situation like that, for one, I don't think it's anything that's really talked about. It's almost like a taboo type subject. I think they're going to see how it plays out and see what happens. But I think they're all, to a man, going to take Deshaun Watson for his word, going to hold him accountable for what he does inside the locker room as far as being that leader. Again, before all this hit the fan, he had a tremendous reputation as being a leader and things of that sort.
And, hey, but don't forget, some stories go like that. You got leaders in the community that end up being horrible.
So I think what happens is, if he gets in there as far as how he's going to feel, I think right now Deshaun Watson is already taken. I mean, I don't think now these new allegations, maybe that may bring some more criminal charges. But I think as long as Deshaun Watson is free and as long as there's no true evidence, he's still going to proclaim his innocence. Again, I go back to the video evidence, and I know people probably be like, why is it? I mean, hey, all these women, I mean, give me something other than she said, he said. So, but I think he's going to be looking at it like, okay, I'm a free man. I have a whole lot of money. I just want to play football, because his reputation, as far as that's concerned, has already been tarnished. So even though there's a couple of more allegations, unless he's worried about the legal ramifications as far as being charged criminally, I mean, if he feels that if he's really guilty and he feels like that's a strong possibility, maybe that may hinder him to some degree. But I think he's at a point right now like, hey, I mean, my reputation in that regard has already been damaged. Yeah. So the only kind of recourse he has at this point is to get back on the football field, again, command the locker room, have players gravitate to him. Don't do anything shady. Don't try to talk to anyone's wife. I mean, stay to yourself, do what you have to do, and be professional, but win games. You win games, that will quell a lot of this in due time. But right now, he's in the fire right now, man.
And the biggest problem for Deshaun Watson, like you mentioned there, he's going to be sitting out an entire season.
Probably a season, yeah.
So what you talk about, like what'll really get the public, and in particular the Cleveland fan base, because it's got to start there. It's got to win over Cleveland first. If he can't win over his home fan base, it's going to be – this is the beginning of the end for Deshaun Watson. Yeah. He's got to win over Cleveland. So if he's out there playing football, he's got an opportunity to do that. If he's sitting at home, that's just more and more time for more allegations. I'm just wondering, by the time we finally get to the point where that season's over, like where is the case going to be at? Where are the allegations going to be at? I mean, it is – you don't know where it's going to end, and you got to imagine that Stefanski and company are over there just holding their breath, hoping and praying. I mean, if I was them, I would get Deshaun to sit down. I know you feel like he's in a position where his only recourse, whenever you have a reputation like he had before all this come out, the only recourse is the only verdict you can get, to take a line from Matthew McConaughey and the Lincoln Lawyer, the only thing you can put up is an NG, baby, and that's a not guilty. Yeah. You know, if he gets a not guilty, then I think he could start to repair that reputation.
That's why I said if he's not charged criminally, I think that helps.
Or if he feels like now that maybe it's a lost cause, that his reputation is burnt, and there's no way it's ever coming back, he's just going to have to accept the role of a heel, then I think he needs to settle these cases, get them behind him, and the sooner people stop talking about this, the sooner Deshaun Watson can get back to playing football.
Right. And see, with that, Eddie,
the longer he's on the sidelines, Greg, the bigger this pink elephant in the room is going to grow.
Well, that's just the way the media is anyway. They're going to sensationalize things, and not saying that this situation doesn't need to be sensationalized, because there are very serious allegations involving women. So I totally understand that. I just think Deshaun Watson, like I've said from day one, if he's proclaiming his innocence, and again, I think a lot of him proclaiming his innocence, I don't think he's sitting back at home saying, I've never done any of that. I've never done any of that. I think where him and his lawyer really started saying, again, to what I said about no evidence for one. But I think when they started seeing people come out of the woodworks that he probably knows that's not true, or he probably knows that was a different situation that happened. And so he's probably, oh, okay, well, I'm going to just completely go against the grain. And if he settles, that's almost like admitting guilt. But you never know what's going to happen in due time. Maybe he may end up feeling like you're feeling. Maybe that's the best thing to do at this point, to go ahead and move on.
Honestly, I was
he wants
hoping
to regain his
for
name
his
back.
sake it would have been over a long time ago.
I remember you said
and
that.
Maybe
and I
the
said,
Miami trade
settle.
will go through. You know, they were going
Right.
to settle whenever Stephen Ross wanted to get Deshaun Watson and make him a Miami Dolphin.
But it was
he demanded
provisions.
that all the cases got settled with an NDA. You know, 18
Yeah, no,
wanted to go,
non-disclosure.
4 didn't want an NDA, so it didn't happen. I mean, we could be talking
We're tearing
about,
up shit in there.
we could be talking about Deshaun Watson, you know, getting ready to start the NFL season while the NFL still sits on their hands making a decision on whether or not he's going to be suspended. Had he been
I think-
traded
you know
to
what?
Miami.
Yeah.
But because all it lingered around and then he went to Cleveland and then they gave him that contract, you got to understand, man, people don't want to see somebody who they think might be cheating the system or might be lying or might be a bad guy. They don't want to see them win.
It's happened.
And when you see them win to the tune that Deshaun Watson won with that contract,
I know.
it makes everybody, you know,
And see?
it makes people turn against you, you know, for no reason. Then they've got nothing better to do. And whether
Of course.
that's right or wrong,
No, I got
let's
you.
just face it's a bad deal for Deshaun Watson.
I totally agree
That's
with
the
that.
last thing you
I
need
totally
is
agree with that.
them just, you know,
I totally
some
agree with that.
nobody from Paducah,
That's
Kentucky,
kinda to my point,
digging
yeah.
through everything Deshaun Watson's done and digging up some, you know, new victim, you know, or a new complaint. And this is the kind of stuff that's going to
If
happen
Deshaun Watson-
as long as he's sitting on the sidelines and as long as he's getting paid.
If Cleveland had not signed Deshaun Watson to that contract or signed him, period, and just say he was released and no team decided to sign him for whatever reason, even though, like I said, that wasn't
Right.
going to be the case because he was such a great player, and they found out that he was not going to be charged criminally. Do these other women come out and say these things then? But the fact, like you said, and like I've said, now with Tony Busby and all these people, now that he's made all that money, I mean,
Well, he already
it's
had
just a form of
170
hating.
from the Texans.
It's a
so,
form
I mean,
of
he was,
hating, in my
he was
opinion.
already a paid man before.
He was.
before
He
all
was.
that came out.
Hey, right. I
Before
agree.
that contract, you know,
I
I mean, he
agree.
just
I
turned
agree.
a good contract into an epic contract.
I agree. I mean, a big-time epic contract is that. So we'll see. But, Eddie, I do agree that I think he'll probably get suspended for an entire season. I just think Roger Goodell, with all these new allegations and just with the hoopla and the hype that it's gotten lately, and I think he's probably going to sit out for an entire season. And that's going to be Roger Goodell in the NFL's way of paying back the Cleveland Browns for going out and signing him to that massive contract. So I think at this point he's probably looking at a 4-year suspension to go along with the year he already missed. And then he's going to have to come back. He's going to have to get into the media, and he's going to have to do things.
If
you
they
know,
don't
for
do
women's
something
rights and women's
unprecedented,
causes
like,
and-
you know, what if they give him, you know, there's been some correlation in the media between the Trevor Bauer suspension and how he got a 2-year suspension for Major League Baseball and how that might affect how the NFL handles Deshaun Watson. I can't imagine they'd give him a 2-year suspension.
and we've
you
never
know.
talked about the Trevor Bauer situation. but
Yeah, I
got
can't
you.
imagine they give him a 2-year suspension. However, what if Roger Goodell did something similar to how he did with Josh Gordon, where you suspend Deshaun Watson indefinitely, but he can apply for reinstatement at the end of the year, and then the NFL can choose after that whole season has passed,
Interesting.
after this whole season coming up has passed,
If they
and
wanna let him back
everything
in there.
that's come out, the more, because you gotta believe that the NFL's still investigating, you know, all throughout
Absolutely.
this
They're
as
gonna-
our Cleveland,
they're doing their own
as are the
investigation, right.
authorities, Rusty Harden, Tony Busby, the whole lot of them.
Right on, right on.
They're all going to keep, you know, they're going to stay steadfast on this case because somebody's going to break something, you know, either Rusty Harden's going to break this thing open for his client or some, you know, reporter's going to break open, you know, the whole case on Deshaun Watson. With
Or
some
somebody
actual
may
proof.
come with some video
Or,
evidence.
yeah. You never,
Which I doubt. They haven't come with it yet.
Something's
but-
going to come up so the NFL can make a decision then, okay, no, we're not going to let you reinstate this year. We might let you reinstate after 4 games into this year, after
Yeah.
6 games into this year, after 10 games. You know, that way they can sort of control where things are at along in a case that's going to take a long time.
It is,
You know,
yeah.
as well as with a player that, let's face it, he's in a situation that is it's unprecedented. Nobody in the NFL has really been in a situation like
I
Deshaun
agree.
Watson.
It's
is
definitely
in,
a precarious
and
of
that puts
definitely
Roger Goodell in
unprecedented
a
situation.
similar situation, you know,
Right.
somewhere where he's
And
got
that's
to
why-
do something,
Yeah.
and
that's why I said
assess
all
a
along.
punishment that people that, you know, they're going to want their fans to come away and say that Deshaun Watson got, you know, at least what was fair for what he did. And
Because you don't want people boycotting the games that Deshaun Watson
Hey,
plays
there's
in.
a reason why Deshaun
called money.
Watson's able to sign that contract. It's because the big TV deals, you don't want these guys walking on morality clauses, and getting out of big contracts that are the whole reason why, the salary cap keeps going up year after year after year.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
hey,
you know what?
I'm
We'll
gonna
see
let
what
you
happens,
finish
man.
on that
We'll see
before
what
we
happens.
move on. We're gonna go to the
I'm done talking about that.
tidbit section of our show as we wrap up this edition of the Sports Court here a little bit. I know you want to talk about Debo Samuel. Samuel looks like
you want to talk about Debo Samuel?
I mean, we can go through.
Oh well, I asked you about him earlier. Was he in camp?
He's going to show up for OTAs now that
Okay.
it is, for a mandatory minicamp. He will be there. It is mandatory, so he's
Debo.
going to show
Debo.
up. I don't know if they're going to sign him to a new deal or not. I know they want Debo to be a part of their future. However, if a player wants to go, you have to consider trading him. Right now, I don't think his value could get any higher.
Yeah.
With Debo Samuel, he's a guy that gets banged up from time to time.
True.
So the more right now, everybody's already seen offensively on tape what you need to see to know that Debo Samuel can interject lightning into your offense if you get him in the building and you're able to acquire that kind of player, that kind of that type of asset and put him on your offense. We already know Debo's that guy, but you don't want to give teams if you don't have to another year of him missing 3, 4, 5, 6 games because he's got a bruised ankle, he's got a bruised knee, this, that, or the other, which we've seen the way they run Debo, the way they use him. If you're going to use him in a way that makes him that big of an impact on the game, then he's going to deal with these nagging injuries. Right now, I think they're probably going to get the most they'll ever get for him unless he plays all 16 games uninjured this next season.
Yeah, and to Eddie, to that point as well, I mean, he's only really had one great season. And, of course, we know what he does for that offense. He opens everything up. I mean, he makes things better for Brandon Ayuk. Because that's why they use a lot of motion as well. Because when you send Debo Samuel in motion, you don't know if he's going to get a handoff or whatever. So he just opens the offense up for Kyle Shanahan. But to your point about him being injured, yeah, and that's been the case because he's such a physical player. And they've only had 1 year of him being at all-pro, but he's seeing all these other wide receivers get the bag. So he's like, this is the best time for him to get paid. Now, as far as the 49ers are concerned, I still think they pay him, but what they may do, the same thing they did with George Kittle and Fred Warner, they may wait until they get closer to training camp before they do so. But I think he'll get the bag because he's that great of a player and he's that important to that team. So we shall see what happens with that. And real quick, man, I want to get your take on Ohio State offering Chris Henry Jr. You all may remember Chris Henry, the late Chris Henry, played in the NFL, was a damn good receiver too. He played in the NFL and he got killed in an accident, I think in 2009 it was. But obviously he got killed right after he had a son. His son is in the 8th grade, Ohio State, and I looked at some video of him. And 6'3" in the 8th grade already and just running by everybody. Ohio State has already offered him, and they've already offered him a scholarship in the 8th grade. But Chris Henry Jr., so be on the lookout for that.
I mean, his dad was super talented.
He was.
An NFL career and a life that was ended way too short. And we know that he had some issues off the field, and you can only hope that his
he
son
gets that squared away.
Yeah, I mean, his son can go places where Chris Henry wasn't able to go because of the way things worked out for him.
Yeah,
I mean, he had some. Yeah, he definitely had some issues with the league and got into some trouble. But when the accident happened, you felt like Chris Henry was bouncing back from that.
He was.
And,
I agree with that.
He was on his way to having a productive NFL
that was
career
unfortunate
and
that
staying
it happened
out
at
of
that
trouble.
time. I agree.
Without a doubt.
I agree with that. And you had him. You had Chad Johnson on the other side over there, man. I mean, those guys were tough. I mean, I hate that. But his son, we'll see what happens. Of course, he's in the 8th grade right now. So, and I don't know if that means he was in the 8th grade because the school year just ended. Will he be in the 9th next season? Next year, I'm assuming he'll be in the 9th grade next year. But, hey, man, I like what Ohio State is doing on the recruiting trail. We've talked about a lot of college football and the recruiting situation in the past, though. We'll see what happens with my Buckeyes moving forward. Travion Henderson, their running back. I don't see them really talking about running backs too often anymore like they did back in the early 80s. Man, the early 80s, Eddie, I'm going to take you back real quick. But that's when running backs, of course, the game has evolved right now to where it's a passing league, and you don't have these running backs, these 230-pound bruisers everything is by committee with the running backs. So that's why the running backs are so devalued right now. But you just harken back, man, to like the early, I'm talking about, you think about it in 1 year. think about 1 year. Well, I'm thinking about Travion Henderson and the year he's going to have for the Buckeyes to go along with C.J. Stroud and the receivers and the entire team. We'll see. But think about the running backs it was 1 year you had now George Rogers was gone from South Carolina. He was already with the Saints. But 1 year you had Mike Rozier, and then, of course, Charles White was gone too. But you had Herschel Walker, you had Mike Rozier, you had Eric Dickerson, you had Marcus Allen, you had Bo Jackson. And then before that, Kelvin Brown was in North Carolina. He ran like 6 touchdowns in one game. But I'm talking about 1 year. Mike Rozier, Eric Dickerson, Marcus Allen, Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson. There's somebody else I'm missing, man. But just think about the running backs back then, bro. But you don't see that these days. So we'll see what happens with Travion Henderson. I want to get your take real quick.
Go ahead.
I want to get your take real quick on what do you think about – I'm hearing a lot about Jalen Hurts and his prospects moving forward. I know we have talked about Jalen Hurts before, but I'm hearing a lot about Jalen Hurts and is Philly making the right choice by believing in him. I heard Swaggo and all these guys talking. They all believe in him, and they feel that he just needs to get, which I agree, he needs to improve in some areas, but it's set up for him to be very good this year. And I just think with Jalen Hurts, man, I think Jalen Hurts is the type of guy, incredibly dedicated, incredibly talented, he's a leader. So, and when I say dedicated, I mean in the sense, we know what he can do running the ball. He's gotten better each season. Now he has the weapons. So my point is, I don't see where this is much of a question. I think it's a no-brainer that Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, I agree with these guys that he's going to have to improve in reading defenses and being more accurate in situations because that playoff game wasn't a good look, even though it was very, very windy. But he got them to the playoffs. Now you add this weaponry, but a guy that's a great leader, that has people gravitate to him, his teammates, and he's gotten better each year. Even in college, he got better each year. You saw what he did when he got to Oklahoma. So I just think with the way he works and with his dedication, bless you, to go along with the talent, I think he's going to have a big-time year with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I hate to say that, being a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Well, we're going to find out because this is certainly the year where the Eagles decide what the future is really going to be with Jalen Hurts. Before long, you're going to have to give him contract if he's going to be the quarterback of your football team. It's going to have to be a respectable contract that not only makes him feel good, but makes the team feel good about their commitment to him as the guy, because that kind of stuff makes a difference.
I think
if they give him a contract that says, I'm a placeholder, well, guess what the team's going to treat him as? They're going to treat him as a placeholder.
Well, I will give this to Philly. They haven't treated him as that.
No.
Far.
Well, here's the deal. They had an opportunity to get into the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes.
Russell Wilson.
There's Russell Wilson. They could have went after Russell Wilson hard. And let's face it, they had the capital to do it.
Right.
When you have 3 first-round picks in one draft, you can go get any player you want on any roster, it feels like. And they could have gone and got a Kyler Murray. They could have gone and got a Russell Wilson, or they could have gotten a Deshaun Watson. But instead, they opted to go and get A.J. Brown, to try to help out a receiving core that is up and coming and budding with the Devontae Smith addition last year. And get some more help for Hurts. You've already got a solid running back, Miles Sanders, who if he can stay healthy is going to be good for them and has been good for them. And then you look at what they did in the draft defensively, understanding that, hey, when the Eagles are good, they're good because they're good up the middle, both offensively and defensively. So you look at their first 2 picks, bam, bam, right out of the gate, they get a big defensive tackle in Jordan Davis. Then they go with Cam Jurgens, the center, out of Nebraska. That's solidifying the middle. You think about when they won that Super Bowl, Greg.
Now, didn't they get the linebacker from Georgia?
Yes.
Oh, man.
And they got N'Kobe Dean. Want to talk about strength up the middle.
That's what I'm talking about.
Talk about strength up the middle. But
he's a beast, man.
You think about their Super Bowl. Think about the impact that Fletcher Cox had, not just in the Super Bowl itself, but in that entire season. Fletcher Cox was dominant up the middle. Now, he's still a dominant player, not as dominant as he was a couple years ago, but he's more expensive. They're going to flirt with probably trading him. He's one of those guys where they can replenish some picks if they move that guy. But you get Jordan Davis so that you don't miss a beat. You go and plug him in. He's now your new Fletcher Cox.
He's the
new
starter.
guy.
Right.
And now you're back to being a team that
people don't want to run up the middle on, and you can get pressure up the middle on the quarterback, and that's something that no offense can really handle well. We see it, week in and week out in the NFL. Pressure up the middle will absolutely destroy a game plan, and Jordan Davis and the Eagles are on the path to doing just that. So to me, I'm seeing an organization that they're all in on Jalen Hurts.
They are.
As long as he doesn't fall flat on his face this year, he's going to get a couple
He's
years
gonna be
to
the
try
guy.
to figure it out. I mean, you don't make the moves. You don't bring in a guy on a big contract like A.J. Brown if you're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater at the first sign of trouble.
Right.
And like you mentioned, Jalen Hurts going all the way back to Alabama, he's shown to be
gotten
a
better each
player
year.
who can put his nose in the playbook and who can grind you out to a victory even when things aren't going his way.
Right.
And that is a big I think plus for his character and his
and I'm glad you mentioned his character.
abilities
A great
as a
character guy.
quarterback.
Right, a great character guy. So you know what he's going to do. He's a guy that you want leading your team. So my only point is I hear these conversations, and I know you have to have something to talk about during the off season, but I've always said to myself, why is that? I think Jalen Hurts is gonna be great next season, and of course he has the arm talent, and he studies a lot of film. He's a great leader. He's gotten better each year. So what are we really talking about here? I mean, and he got them to the playoffs this past season with all the acquisitions that you stated and the acquisitions with A.J. Brown. And, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer that Jalen Hurts is going to have. He is the quarterback for the future for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we shall see what the Cowboys do with him next year because he's a dual threat. And he has the arm talent. Now, and he works with the quarterback coach in the offseason. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And speaking of A.J. Brown, his former team, Traylon Burks, first-round draft pick, not good news. Now he has asthma. So it's like, wow, man. I mean, as a wide receiver, he missed practice the other day because of asthma. And you don't want a guy with asthma playing wide receiver in the NFL.
No, I mean, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's something that if it can be controlled with medication, and it hasn't been a big deal for him in the past.
Right.
I think
true.
it's something that they'll get under control. But hey, the Titans knew what they were doing when they were gambling.
Oh, I like him. He's a special talent.
Making the trade and then making that guy essentially A.J. Brown's replacement. You root for the kid, but it's big shoes to fill over there.
I agree.
11 left some really big kicks, biggest skis, and they're going to be hard to fill. And it's not easy to come into the league as a rookie and have success. We saw A.J. Brown do just that, and I hate to say it, but in Tennessee, they're expecting Burks to do just the same thing.
I agree.
Just that,
And I
come
like his
in,
talent.
have success immediately. Even if he doesn't, I don't want them to get bent out of shape because sometimes it takes a couple of years.
Absolutely, especially for a wide receiver.
Not everybody's,
even though lately these wide receivers
DeAndre Hopkins or
Right.
you could say not everybody's DeMar Chase. DeAndre Hopkins had 900 yards his first
year
in the NFL.
Yeah.
But you could tell he was a dominant receiver in the making, and you just hope for one of those kind of years for Traylon Burks.
And I root for the guy, man. I mean, like you said, it's something that they probably can't curtail. I just hate to hear that news like asthma. I mean, and there's a lot of players that's played with asthma. So, but man, in a pass-happy league like this, you don't need him having to come out the game because he can't breathe or he's that tired because of the asthma. I mean, so we shall see. But I like him as a tremendous talent. He's a tremendous talent. Now, real quick before we go, Eddie, got to give congratulations to Darvin Ham. The Lakers they introduced Darvin Ham as the head coach moving forward for the Los Angeles Lakers. And I know I've been on record saying, I wish they would have given Mark Jackson a chance. But, hey, Darvin Ham, I mean, he's earned it. I mean, give somebody a chance I like them giving him a chance as well. And I think he's earned it. He's been a tremendous assistant for years. He's been on some championship teams. I mean, here's a guy that started out with the Lakers, and I think 2010 but his first assistant job was with the Lakers. Yeah. And, of course, he was very close to Kobe Bean Bryant. So he's coached some great players. He's going to be coaching. And of course he coached Giannis. And so he's going to be, and he learned a lot from Kobe. He stated he learned a lot from Kobe Bryant. It just in film session, going out to dinner, talking to him, shooting the breeze with him and things like that. So he knows how to handle these big personalities and these great superstar players. Giannis, I can go on and on. But congratulations to him. It's going to be interesting. One thing I do like what he was preaching yesterday in that press conference, defense. Like I've always talked about, defense. And he's preaching defense, and he says no matter what the Lakers do, nothing is going to happen. They're not going to have any success unless they have a tremendous defensive effort. And he's going to hold people accountable. And he said that they need to get their rhythm together, rhythm on offense. But again, he stated that if you don't bring it on the defensive end, you're not going to have that rhythm on the offensive end. He has a game plan. I like what he's doing. He's coming in there saying that, hey, Anthony Davis, maybe he may play at the 5 more often, because unless you're going to play Anthony Davis at the 4 all the time, I mean, it's almost like you're playing, because Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan, I mean, they're way past their time as a big-time center, and Dwight Howard might just end up being a Hall of Famer. DeAndre Jordan was a great player in his role with the Clippers and other teams, but, I mean, if you're going to have to maximize the talent that you have on your team. And those guys are role players coming off the bench. They're not starting centers right now in a league where you need to have a center that can stretch the floor. So Anthony Davis, even though he's not crazy about playing the 5, what it will do, it will help open up things, because what Darvin Ham wants to implement, he wants to implement a perimeter game around. Of course, he has to get Russ going. He said he feels Russ still has a lot left in the tank. But he wants Anthony Davis to have that room to operate and have that mid-range game operating and really have some things flowing like that. But he says they have to get that rhythm. But more important than anything, what I he said yesterday, he's going to hold everyone accountable, and they have to be tenacious on the defensive side of the ball.
Now, here, I'll say this. I read it. I saw an article earlier today, that talked about how Darvin Ham got chills when he saw how excited LeBron James was when he found out the news that Ham was going to be the head coach. To that, I'm just gonna say, let's just hold on just a minute, because I think Darvin Ham's gonna be a fantastic coach. I think he is one hell of a head coach. I think that he's gonna have some winning seasons under his belt as a head coach.
I agree.
I
Eddie.
hate to say it, but hang on. I honestly don't think it's going to start with this LeBron James led Lakers, and it's not because he's not because he's a bad coach, or it's more on Rob Pelinka, and I don't think he has any idea what he's doing building this roster. To me, they swung for the fences with Anthony Davis without a good plan on how they were going to.
He stated that Anthony Davis needs to stay
how
healthy.
They were going to replenish the cupboard and how they were going to handle that. They just kind of swung for the fences, like, okay, we get Anthony Davis, and then they got him, like, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And I think going and getting Russell Westbrook was a bad move, clearly. And I feel bad that
he
Darvin
Ham
with
that team.
Has to try to figure out how to make it work with these guys. If we're talking about,
and he's up for the task.
If we're talking about a 27-year-old LeBron and a 28-year-old Russell Westbrook, I think it's a different story. But we're talking about guys that are late in their careers.
A lot of mileage.
Yeah,
a lot of mileage on those legs.
Road. How much are you?
Even though they're still playing great ball. Are you going to
really be able to reinvent the wheel with these guys and get them playing basketball at a level?
That's this.
Or at a style that they never played before. It just.
Well, if you think about it,
LeBron, I think yes, he's still got it in him.
Yeah.
I don't know if Russ still has it in him. If he's the guy, I think he's a terrible fit. And then with Anthony Davis. Yeah, you play him at the 5, but a lot of the reasons why they're afraid to play him at the 5 is because banging with the bigs night in and night out
injured.
Yeah, absolutely leads to him not being able to play.
Right. And Darvin Ham, he actually said that, okay, AD has to stay healthy. And, of course, some of those injuries you can't help. But he's very injury prone. Make no mistake about that.
I just feel like the roster is cursed.
No. The roster is not that good. So that's what they're going to have to do. Rob Pelinka and those guys, they're going to have to get some younger, fresh legs around LeBron, because you can't depend on LeBron to set the tone. Now, of course, what he's hoping with Anthony Davis, if he stays healthy, as far as putting him at the 5, of course, you have that rim protection as well. We know Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, he's a great defensive player. He can be, if he's healthy, of course.
I'll say this before we close, and then I'll let you finish.
Go ahead.
If this season ends up being a epic flaming disaster like this past season was for the Los Angeles Lakers, then they better not go with okay, well, let's look for the next guy. And that's why I said let's hold on a minute when talk about Darvin Ham got chills, because LeBron will turn on you in an instant, because he's turned on every coach he's had.
I know.
He will turn on. He's a turncoat. He will turn on you in an instant. So I hope that if it does go down in a heaping, flaming mess, I hope that they decide to hang on to Ham and go ahead and move on from LeBron James.
Appreciate you.
Because
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
move on
Well,
from him. Somebody will take him, and,
You know what?
and then they can retool and become a young team. Let Darvin Ham put his imprint on a young roster. Like, imagine if Darvin Ham was the coach of the Rockets
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Imagine what he could
Well,
do with all that young talent.
Oh man, that would have been great to have him with the Rockets right now. But again, I think he's going to hit the ground, and you have three great players if they could find a way to. But Russ is going to have to change his role. He said that as much too. So if he now
You look
I
at what
totally
he
agree.
does. He's very limited in the roles that he could fill.
Well,
why
he
don't you
can't
just
shoot.
put
He
him
can't
in
shoot.
a
Now,
suit?
make no mistake
put him in
about
a suit
it.
and tie.
I'm
let
not
him play
going to dog
that
Russ
role.
because Russ is one of the greatest to ever do it. But with that team, he might not be a great fit. And LeBron
It's
is
a
still
redundant
playing.
asset,
Well, LeBron is playing at a very high level right now. But again, as far as setting the defensive tone, in my opinion, like we're saying, you're going to have to get some young, fresh legs on that team to implement that type of style, because LeBron is not going to play defense every possession like he used to play.
LeBron James with grinders
Now, I
and
wanna give-
shooters, and that's it.
I want to say big kudos to Frank Vogel. I just want to throw him to the curb just because they had a bad season. He did just win a championship a few years ago, even though they were in the bubble. But I mean, so it's not like Frank Vogel was chopped liver. I mean, he's a good coach. I mean, just lost the pulse of the team. And again, I don't think he was working with a whole lot of talent. I don't think Rob Pelinka did him any favors. So I hope Frank Vogel gets back on his feet, because he did just deliver a championship not long ago, 2019, with the Lakers. So I really think Darvin Ham is going to hit the ground running. He's going to really implement the right attitude with the team. Now, whether or not that transfers into wins, because if they don't have the talent on that team, I don't think LeBron and AD with his health and even Russell Westbrook is going to be able to make you a championship contender next year. But I do like the fact that they're taking a chance on him. And so far, I like what I've heard. And it seems like these guys, as of now, are respecting him to the fullest. And again, I look back at what Ime Udoka is doing with the Celtics, and they're right there in the finals right now. And even though I picked the Warriors, the finals are still going on. That's why they play the game. And if he ends up winning a championship this year, I mean, wow. But of course, he has a lot more young talent as well. Hey, we're gonna get out of here. Eddie, great job as always, my friend. Love you, bro. And hey, it's been fun. See y'all next Tuesday. The Sports Court, the show where we keep it 100% of the time. Legends live and let live.
Later.